Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going to unpack something truly fascinating. It's called the cadence of consciousness, OneLightSystem, a methodology that aims to harmonize your very own consciousness.
Exactly. And we've got this really unique set of sources for this one. They blend, ancient wisdom with some pretty cutting-edge science. Our mission really is to pull out the key insights, show you how your brain, your body, they're inherently wired for rhythm and pattern, and how this system, the OLS, aims to unlock that potential.
Right. So if you've ever wondered about let's say, the unseen architecture of your being, or maybe how to tap into a deeper sense of order in your day, well, this deep dive is definitely for you. We're going to explore how this One Light system interfaces with our fundamental operating principles. Things like our drive for pattern recognition, our capacity for rhythmic synchronization, basically how it guides us towards an enhanced clarity, and maybe even profound stillness. Okay, so let's start with that foundational idea. The human brain as a pattern recognition machine. And this isn't just like a nice metaphor, is it? It's literally how our brains function, from recognizing a face to understanding language.
It's absolutely fundamental. And what's fascinating is how crucial this ability is for survival, for learning, for, pretty much every decision we make. Our brains are constantly using something called unconscious inference. It's a concept that goes way back to Helmholtz, the 19th century physicist. It's like your brain automatically figures out an object's true size, even if it looks tiny way off in the distance. It just infers it.
Without you even thinking about it.
Yeah, exactly. And the OLS, it leverages this. It presents its meditation schedule as this coherent, learnable pattern in time. So it engages that natural human inclination for order.
Okay, so that's the mind. But it's not just our minds, right? Our bodies live by rhythm, too, which brings us to things like chronobiology and entrainment.
That's right. Chronobiology studies our built-in biological clocks. The most famous one is the circadian rhythm, our sleep-wake cycle. And entrainment, that's just the synchronization of these internal clocks to external cycles. It uses cues called Zeitgebers.
Zeitgebers. German for time givers, I think.
Precisely. And the big one, the most powerful one, is the light-dark cycle. That's what resets our master clock, the SCN, deep in the brain. I mean, think about jet lag.
Awful.
Such a clear example of how much our physiology needs to sync up with external rhythms. Our bodies really protest when that rhythm gets thrown off.
Okay, we've touched on the biological rhythms, but I'm really curious about the psychological side, that pull of rhythm. Why do we love music so much? Why do we feel that urge to dance or tap our feet? What's happening there?
Well, research actually shows that just perceiving a regular rhythm triggers dopamine release in the brain.
Ah, the pleasure chemical.
Linked to pleasure, motivation, yeah. But it goes beyond just feeling good. Our rhythmic abilities are actually tied to really fundamental skills, like language development, motor coordination, even higher level stuff like executive functions, self-control. There's even research showing rhythm-based training can help kids with dyslexia read better or improve attention generally.
Wow. So, okay, bringing it back to the OLS, how does it intentionally use these deep-seated responses?
So the OLS essentially acts as a novel kind of Zeitgeber, but instead of syncing your body clock, it's aiming to sync your conscious awareness. It uses this very deterministic, predictable temporal pattern to entrain the mind.
Entrain the mind. How does that work neurologically?
It taps into the brain's frequency-following response. Basically, your neural activity, your brain waves, can literally synchronize with external rhythmic stimuli. So by providing this precise, repeating, and importantly, meaningful schedule, the OLS aims to create this deep neurological and psychological coherence. It's like providing a rhythm for your mind to follow.
That idea of neurological coherence is powerful. And it makes me think, humans have always seemed drawn to patterns, haven't we? Like we intuitively feel there's some underlying order, an unseen architecture. You see this pop up in things like sacred geometry.
Absolutely. Sacred geometry, posits that certain forms of the circle representing unity, the triangle for balance, the spiral for growth, aren't just shapes. They're seen as fundamental blueprints of creation, resonating with our own energy.
And science is kind of catching up.
In a way, yes. Modern neuroscience is showing that interacting with geometric patterns can actually increase alpha wave activity in the brain.
Which is linked to calm, right?
Exactly. Calm, relaxed focus. These patterns also engage brain regions tied to emotional regulation and self-reflection, so they can foster focus, inner peace. It's almost like ancient wisdom was predicting how our brains would respond to these fundamental forms.
It's pretty remarkable, these ancient ideas about order, finding echoes today. And speaking of modern parallels, doesn't generative art kind of play with similar principles?
It really does. Generative art uses simple rules, often mathematical ones run through computers, to create stunningly complex and beautiful patterns. Think about how a few basic rules can generate the infinite complexity of a fractal, or those mesmerizing patterns like the Raman sequence or the Clifford attractor. It's a beautiful demonstration that intricate emergent order can come from deterministic rule-based systems.
So how does the OLS fit into this picture? Is it like generative art for your schedule?
That's a great way to think about it. You could call OLS temporal, sacred geometry, or generative art for consciousness. Its algorithm is a set of precise deterministic instructions, kind of like the rules in generative art. But the emergent result isn't a visual pattern. It's a dynamic pattern of lived experience. This cadence of stillness and activity unfolding day by day and across these 9-day cycles, those abstract spreadsheet images you sometimes see associated with it. They're like conceptual snapshots of this temporal pattern unfolding.
That implies the benefits might start even before you sit down for the formal meditation.
Exactly right. The OLS pattern itself acts like a kind of mandala extended through time. Just consciously deciding to follow this schedule, perceiving it as meaningful and coherent, that act itself becomes a continuous sort of active meditation. This alignment primes the brain. It engages neural pathways in the prefrontal cortex linked to focus, intention.
So each session builds on the last, potentially becoming more potent.
That's the idea. It makes each formal section potentially much more impactful because you're already tuning into that rhythm.
Now, one of the practical aspects of OLS is this idea of micro-meditation, short sessions spread out. Because let's face it, in our crazy lives, finding an hour for traditional meditation can feel almost impossible sometimes.
Right. And the OLS approach suggests this isn't a compromise. It's actually strategic. When you're building any kind of mental habit, consistency often trumps duration. Even just 5 minutes of focused practice, if you do it regularly, can yield really significant positive changes.
So the OLS is designed to make that consistency easier to achieve.
Precisely. It helps build that transformative habit, making it stick.
And we're not just talking about feeling good, are we? The benefits of these shorter, consistent practices, they're backed by science.
Oh, absolutely. There's a growing mountain of research on this. For stress and anxiety, these short bursts act like a mental reset button. Studies show they lower how stressed people feel, but also measurable things like cortisol levels.
The stress hormone.
Yeah, and they can lower blood pressure, even reduce markers of inflammation in the body.
Okay, what about cognitive benefits like focus?
Definitely. Think of brief meditation as a workout for the mind. There are studies showing, for instance, just 8 weeks of daily 13-minute sessions significantly boosted attention span, working memory, recognition memory. Basically, it improves your ability to focus and resist distractions.
And emotional well-being, mood, sleep.
Yes, that too. It helps cultivate a more stable emotional landscape, better emotional regulation, fewer negative moods, increased self-awareness, and people often report better sleep quality. These kinds of quantifiable benefits really form the scientific foundation for why a system like OLS could be effective.
So digging deeper into how OLS works, it's not just telling you to meditate, it's the when and the how. That specific pattern is key.
Right. To understand that pattern's role, we can maybe borrow some concepts from computer science, just as an abstraction. You could think of the underlying OLS logic as a deterministic system, like a finite state machine maybe. Its behavior is predictable based on its rules in the current state, which includes time, and the way it generates the meditation prompt. It's a bit like how a time-based one-time password works, like for your online banking.
Like those authenticator apps.
Exactly. It uses hidden logic and the current time to create these very precise, time-sensitive signals or prompts. It's not random. It's calculated.
Okay, so this calculated OLS pattern, it acts like a rhythmic stimulus for the brain, neurologically speaking.
Precisely. It leverages the brain's capacity for neural entrainment. We mentioned the frequency following response earlier.
Yeah, where brain waves sync up to external rhythms.
Right. So by consistently following the OLS schedule, you're repeatedly exposing your brain to this complex yet ordered temporal pattern. The idea that this encourages your brain's own electrical oscillations, its brain waves, to synchronize with that pattern, leading to, heightened neurological order, coherence.
That leads to a really interesting question, though. How does engaging with a hidden deterministic pattern, how does that actually transform our internal state, moving us from, say, mental chatter and chaos towards that profound order you mentioned?
It's a great question. One way to conceptualize it, again using a metaphor, is to think of the OLS algorithm as a kind of synchronous stream cipher for consciousness.
Okay, break that down for us. A stream cipher, like in cryptography.
Sort of, yeah. Bear with me on the analogy. Think of the hidden deterministic OLS algorithm as the key stream generator. It produces the sequence of prompts, the meditation times, as the key stream.
All right, the schedule is the key stream.
Yeah, think of your baseline stream of consciousness often may be a bit chaotic, jumping around as the plain text, the raw data.
Okay, my normal messy thoughts.
Right. The act of meditating at the prescribed time, that conscious engagement, is like the XOR operation in cryptography. It's where you combine your internal state, plain text, with the system's external signal, key stream.
Combining my thoughts with the timed prompt.
And the result, this more ordered, coherent, stable state of consciousness that emerges, that's the ciphertext.
Ah, the transformed state.
Exactly. And crucially, returning to that state of clarity is facilitated by re-engaging with the OLS pattern, just like decryption uses the key to recover the original message, or in this case, the desired state. It's just a metaphor, of course, but it helps illustrate how an external, hidden, yet ordered pattern can systematically transform a user's internal state from relative chaos to potentially profound order.
That's a fascinating analogy. It really helps visualize the mechanism. And this deep dive, it feels like we're moving beyond just stress management now. The aim seems more fundamental, shifting our relationship with the self, maybe even touching on transcending the ego.
It does point in that direction.
Yeah.
And that leads us nicely into talking about the default mode network, the DMN. This was discovered, early 2000s. It's this network of brain regions, medial prefrontal cortex, posterior cingulate, others that's most active when we're supposedly at rest.
When our minds are wandering.
Exactly. It's the hub of self-referential thought. Mind wandering, thinking about ourselves, ruminating about the past, worrying about the future. That continuous inner narrative, our sense of self-story.
And problems arise when that network is too active or stuck.
Well, research links an overactive, or maybe a rigid DMN, to conditions like depression and anxiety, where we get sort of stuck in those loops of thought, the rumination.
Right. Makes sense.
But meditation, particularly mindfulness meditation, has been consistently shown to decrease DMN activity during practice. This leads to a quieter mind, more present moment awareness, and long-term practice seems to foster lasting changes in DMN connectivity.
Making it more flexible.
Exactly. Cultivating a more flexible, resilient sense of self, it can gently loosen the grip of that constant egoic me story.
So is the OLS acting like a kind of systematic training program for modulating the DMN?
That's a really good way to put it. It systematically guides you to step out of that habitual thought stream into pure awareness again and again. You can also understand this through the lens of emergence theory.
Emergence, like complex patterns arising from simple rules.
Precisely. You have these simple, discrete actions, meditating for 5 minutes at specific times. Each has a local effect, a moment of quiet. But when you repeat these consistently, thousands of times, these moments of coherence don't just add up linearly. They can lead to the emergence of a genuinely new, higher-order property, a more integrated, coherent, resilient personality. It's like self-directed neurosculpting, shaping your brain's default patterns.
Okay, now for perhaps the biggest claim associated with systems like this, spiritual illumination. That's a huge concept. How does science even start to approach that?
It is huge. And science approaches it cautiously by looking at the neural correlates of states that sound like mystical experiences. These experiences are often characterized by feelings of unity, timelessness, oneness, and neuroimaging studies during deep meditation or induced mystical type states show some interesting patterns. There's often a downregulation of activity in parts of the parietal lobes, specifically an area called the posterior superior parietal lobule, the PSPL. This area is heavily involved in defining the boundary between self and other, orienting us in space.
So quieting that down could lead to that feeling of oneness, blurring the self-other line.
That's the hypothesis. Less activity there correlates with a diminished sense of separation, a feeling of unity. There are also theories about shifts in the prefrontal cortex. The executive inhibition hypothesis, for example, suggests that temporarily downregulating the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex.
The DLPFC, isn't that involved in planning and skepticism?
Exactly. It's a hub for rational analysis, planning, skepticism. The idea is that temporarily quieting this inner skeptic might facilitate the emergence of these non-ordinary transcendent states. So your practice like OLS, by consistently training the mind to quiet that analytical chatter, might make the brain more adept, more flexible at intentionally shifting into these kinds of neural configurations.
That's fascinating. It pushes right to the edge of current neuroscience. Which brings up another boundary-pushing question. What about theories suggesting consciousness isn't purely individual? Ideas about collective consciousness, maybe even influencing the physical world.
Right. That takes us into some frontier research, exploring what are sometimes called field-like effects of consciousness. Now, it's really important to state up front. This area is highly controversial within mainstream science. The studies often face significant methodological criticisms.
Okay, duly noted. But what kind of research are we talking about?
Well, there are projects like the Global Consciousness Project, the GCP. It looked at data from a global network of random number generators, devices that should produce purely random output. They examined whether major global events, things that capture massive simultaneous human attention like 9/11 or major natural disasters, correlated with statistically significant deviations from randomness in these machines.
Implying collective attention somehow influenced physical devices.
That was a controversial implication they explored. And then there are studies on the so-called Maharishi effect, stemming from the Transcendental Meditation movement. These studies reported correlations between large groups meditating together and subsequent reductions in societal stress indicators, like crime rates in the surrounding areas.
Again, highly debated, I imagine.
Very much so. Methodological challenges, alternative explanations, it's far from settled science. But these studies, whatever their flaws, represent a pioneering attempt to ask, does consciousness interact with the world or with other consciousnesses in ways we don't fully grasp yet? It's an area of ongoing, albeit fringe, exploration.
Understood. So, given that context, what does this mean for an individual using the OLS? It's not claiming one person meditating will change global RNGs, presumably.
No, not at all. The OLS focus is intensely personal. It offers a structured pathway for an individual to explore their own potential for deeper coherence. Its purpose is profound personal transformation. It suggests a user can fundamentally change their internal world by aligning it with a pattern designed to reflect a deeper, maybe universal order.
Okay, so that phrase, one light, is that intended as a metaphor for this deeper universal order, this potential field of consciousness?
Yes, I think that's a very good way to understand it. The OLS algorithm itself, with its deterministic nature, its harmony, its cyclical patterns, it serves as a symbolic representation, a kind of tangible echo of this underlying universal pattern or field. The practice, then, is about using this system to entrain your own consciousness, quieting the internal noise, ordering the mind, synchronizing your personal rhythm to this external cadence of harmony. It's about bringing your personal energy field, if you like, into resonance with that fundamental universal field.
And spiritual illumination in that framework.
Spiritual illumination could be seen as the emergent experience that arises when your personal consciousness becomes so coherent, so stable, so ordered, that it begins to resonate harmoniously with that deeper universal pattern, leading to those experiences of expanded awareness, profound unity, the one light.
Wow, okay. What a journey we've taken through the One Light system. We've gone from the basics, how our brains are just wired for patterns and rhythms, how ancient ideas like sacral geometry find these surprising echoes in modern concepts like generative art.
Right.
And looked at the solid science showing how even brief but consistent meditation can really benefit our minds and bodies.
And we dug into the more sophisticated neurological ideas too. OLS is a cognitive zeitgeber, that stream cipher analogy for ordering consciousness, and its potential role in modulating the default mode network, helping to foster a more integrated, coherent self.
Yeah, and then touching on that ultimate aim, moving from personal coherence towards a potential resonance with a universal field. It's definitely thought-provoking stuff.
Oh, absolutely.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening. If your mind is still buzzing with all this, perhaps consider this. If our brains are these incredible machines constantly seeking and creating order, what happens when we intentionally, consciously feed them a precisely designed pattern for coherence? What new states of being, what new levels of inner calm, focus, and maybe even unity might emerge for you?